Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Talk number 16, and it is a rather long poem that reflects my remarkable frustration over the fact that after 400 years from the very beginnings of slavery, we still manage as a culture to treat a segment of our population differently and with prejudice. This is entitled 400 Years. 400 years ago, human beings, stolen from their home, from their kinships, from the beauty of their world, from their families, their lovers, their children. 400 years ago, human beings piled into the holds of ships, shackled and abused, barely able to move, stripped of their humanity, denied their freedom, humiliated, often drowned. 400 years ago, human beings treated somehow less than human, like expendable chattel, like mere property, disposable, exploited, murdered with impunity, with indifference, with carefree and deadly violence. 400 years from then until now, intervening decades, this insidious poison spread through the generations, periodic massacres of innocents, near genocide of Native Americans, treated as nameless obstacles to colonization and conquest, bloodbath that was the Civil War, hundreds of thousands of bodies left dead on forsaken battlegrounds, twisted and mutilated wreckage forged from an erroneous notion of supremacy based not on merit, not on reason or logic, nor justice, but on accidental whiteness, now faithfully eulogized and solemnly remembered. Blight and contagion spread to other hapless victims, Chinese, Japanese, Hispanics, Muslims, humans mostly of color, of difference in outlook, in custom, in dress, in persuasion, their collective sin, their unforgettable characteristic. The true nature of their threat to be born with non-whiteness, with gradations of color, no matter how slight, no matter how innocuous, this overweening fallacy that forged so much carnage, that ushered in Jim Crow, that gave birth to the Ku Klux Klan and the NRA and Tea Party politicians, inevitably spread to other lands under the guise of foreign policy, national defense, beneath the umbrella of justifiable wars, leaving millions upon millions of dead, immense carnage and grief, Korean and Vietnamese and Iraqi and Afghani and Mexican and Filipino, mothers to grieve for their children, their elders, their families. 400 years, and yet this unspeakable terror, this fearsome and unimagined horror still persists, some human beings using power and wealth to dehumanize others based upon the color of their skin. And yet, mindless bigotry, hatred, and violence still plague this nation, even in the 21st century, with all that science teaches, with all that we know, yet senseless prejudice is sustained and nurtured in spite of all that logic and reason dictate, in spite of all that we understand as truth. For 400 years, in spite of all that we know, the killing goes on. Mothers continue to grieve. Justice is denied. Unnecessary suffering roars through this country in a hurricane of grief. Those who live on stolen lands arm themselves, preparing for conflagration that they cannot possibly control. Those who possess inordinate wealth, callous to the suffering, indifference to the injustice, refuse to relent in their insatiable greed. This poison passed around in giant goblets that touch the lips and infest so many precious hearts and minds with pure nonsense. It has been 400 years. It needs to stop. This moribund and dangerous idea of superiority based upon the fallacy called race needs to be extinguished once and for all, not by the power of intimidation, not by violence, not by fiat, but simply and resolutely through a transformation of ideas. It is up to the people of this wondrous land to teach the children and ourselves what is fundamentally the truth, that we are all members of the same species, Homo sapiens. We share the same architecture of body and mind, the same panoply of emotions and desires, the same capacity for love, for reason and harmony, for logic and intellect, for imagination and creativity, inventiveness, and for art. Each and every one of this family of human beings deserving of equal measures of social and economic justice, equal access to health care, to shelter, to nutrition, opportunity to thrive and to prosper, to learn and to grow without any fear of reprisal or bigotry or baseless retribution, all worthy of the love that mothers naturally give, of being embraced and included without hesitation or reluctance or trepidation within the all-encompassing arms of the human family. After 400 years, is this really too much to ask for? Thank you. Thank you for listening. Until next time.